So I don't know if you guys have seen this video from this creator, June Ainsley, but what she is talking about how she has personally witnessed 3 generations of women with chronic illnesses get basically kind of neglected by the husbands in their lives. And the conversation is about men who leave their wives when they are sick. But what she is talking about specifically are the husbands that stayed and basically just neglected their wives so much to the point that the wives expired. These conversations are necessary because a lot of the times women buy into the in sickness and in health, but that does not apply to women because literally women are seen as a wife appliance. We are not full and actualized humans. So when their wife appliance starts to malfunction, the men start to look for a way to dispose of that wife appliance. Please keep that in mind. That is the reason why many of these women who work in healthcare, nurses or whatever, prep the women for the inevitable divorce that comes along with it. So if you're on TikTok, go watch this go watch this video.
Men are known to leave their wives when their wives get sick, and I just started watching Love is Blind, the new season.
As a woman with MS, I can 100% confirm that this is true. So I have kind of a unique perspective on this because I myself have MS, but I also come from a giant family cluster of MS. So my mother has MS, 4 of her 6 sisters have MS, and there's like 24 cousins on that side of the family, and one by one, all of the women of my generation are getting MS. Now, my grandmother didn't have MS, but she had Parkinson's. So I've been witness to 3 generations of women with chronic illnesses being absolutely abandoned by their husbands. And a lot of times they leave, right? Not right away. They'll stay for about 6 months after the diagnosis and play the hero while everyone's still watching, everyone's praising them for being brave and selfless. And then once the actual work begins, once it becomes unglamorous and hard, they dip out. And they do it in a way that leaves them feeling blameless, right? They pick fights, they start building resentment, they start manufacturing conflicts, they start gaslighting. Essentially, these men will do the things that men do when they want out of a relationship, but they don't want to feel like the bad guy. Or they'll stay and kill their wives through neglect. Now, this is what's happened in my family multiple times. So my grandfather, who is devoutly Catholic, did not leave my grandmother when she got diagnosed with Parkinson's. He did, however, let her starve to death through neglect. A month after she died, he proposed to someone else. I have another aunt who has died from MS, and her husband didn't let her starve, but he also refused to help in any way. So by the end, my aunt was in a wheelchair, she was paraplegic, she essentially died from suffocation. And yet this man refused to do the dishes, refused to do laundry, refused to tidy the house, refused to do any sort of housework in general. And so they lived in this hoarder, squalor, horribly unhygienic environment because he just refused to help out. As soon as she died, he got rid of all of her stuff, anything and everything that was hers or reminded him of her, cleared it out of the house, and he hasn't been seen from since. For all I know, he's remarried. I have another aunt who's in the hospital right now for MS. She needs a walker to get around the house. She cannot use a phone because she doesn't have the dexterity in her fingers. And her husband routinely leaves her for 3 weeks at a time to just go on vacation without her. And he doesn't arrange for her kids to stop by or for like frozen meals or anything. No, he just leaves. I mean, he's not pushing her down the stairs of the house, but these men are essentially trying to usher their wives into the grave through neglect. This is just in my family. And I think one of the most amazing things about TikTok is that we as women are starting to realize that these stories aren't personal. It's not like, oh, that relationship was flawed and it fell apart under stress. No, these are systemic issues. These are patriarchy issues. When men take that vow of in sickness and in health, they only mean their sickness and their health. As soon as their wife gets sick, they're out. And this happens so frequently that hospitals have formal or informal HR modules on how to train nurses and doctors to break the news to women when they get a chronic illness like this, that their husbands are going to leave them. This is not an individual issue. This is an issue with our whole society, our whole culture.
On that particular video, someone made this comment. It's very interesting. Your family has a known history of having women with neurological issues, yet continue to have kids anyway. Very interesting. And that's what some of these people do. Instead of really addressing what she's talking about, which is the men neglecting the spouses instead of being supportive or whatnot, they're personally trying to deflect and take, like, look over here. Don't pay attention to the neglectfulness of the husbands, because because that's a challenging topic to really broach. But pointing the finger and making something wrong with the woman, that's a better way to go, to get her talking about something else. But June Ainsley, she really tackled this comment, and she did so with such grace. So if you're on TikTok, go watch that video. If you are on my YouTube, I'm about to play that next.
So after my last video, I got a number of these comments. I think it's really interesting that in a video describing horrible systemic abuse by men, you're targeting women's choices here. But okay, this is a teachable moment, so let's go. So first off, we didn't know we were in a giant family cluster until just a couple of years ago. MS often doesn't present until later in life. Because of biases in our medical system, it can take women 10 years or more to get an accurate diagnosis. And also, the women in my family hid their symptoms and their diagnoses from each other. Why, you might ask? Abuse. Because that's what abuse does. It isolates you from your family, from your social network, from your support. It whispers to you that this problem is your problem, not a systemic problem. It's a personal problem. And it erodes your perspective. So it wasn't until the autistic black sheep of the family got diagnosed and just started shouting it to everybody that all the other women started coming out of the woodwork. Secondly, we don't even know what genes contribute to MS. If two identical twins with the same exact genes, if one of them has MS, the other one only has a 50-50 chance of getting MS as well. The same exact genes. So even if IVF was a reasonable financial option in this country, which it's not, there's no way to screen or select for the MS genes. We just don't even know what they are. And it seems that environmental factors play a huge role. Things like viruses, trauma, and abuse. It all comes back to abuse. Every woman alive has all the eggs she's ever going to make by the time she is born. Which means every single person alive existed in some form in the body of their maternal grandmother when she was pregnant with your mother. And I don't mean this in a metaphysical sense. I mean literally, half of your genetics were present inside your grandmother as she was growing your mother in her uterus. And it is a well-documented scientific phenomenon that things like stress and abuse can suppress or activate certain genes. There's like 1 million mouse studies with this, look them up. But that means every trauma that your grandmother went through up until she was pregnant with your mother, and any trauma that she went through when she was pregnant with your mother, has the potential to activate or suppress certain genes in the grandchild. Because those eggs were forming inside of your mother when your grandmother was pregnant with her. We often talk about generational trauma in more kind of a spiritual sense, but there's a real genetic component to this. So instead of telling the women of my family that maybe we should stop having babies, maybe we should tell men to stop being abusive dickheads. I can tell you for sure that the women in my family are working to break generational cycles of abuse and trauma. They're in therapy, they're doing the work, they're decentering men, they are looking out for themselves, they are building community. Doing that has more potential to eliminate MS in my family than any sort of gene selection would. So let's put on the men to do better instead of shaming women for wanting to have children. But also, I haven't ruled this one out, so...
Now for some of the comments on the post, because women are sharing their stories all over the place. Mama Tree says, men also leave if their kids get diagnosed. Mine left within months of the first autism diagnosis. Him leaving relieved so much stress in the house. And then Mama Yaga says, my baby has autism. He, as in the husband, he picked fights and was horrible to us to make me leave so he can be blameless. He was married a few months later. Ice Plus Dust Pottery says, mine refused to seek a diagnosis or treatment. I left, got our son diagnosed, and have been taking him to all his therapies for years by myself while working full time. This is another thing that goes along with the birth rate plummeting to hell. Women need to know and understand a lot of the time, and we're having these conversations on purpose, women get left with most of the caretaking duties. So please know and understand that. Cloud says, my mom worked in the schools for many years and told me this. A lot of single moms with disabled children. That was sad to find out. Kellyanne honed in on this part. They only mean in their sickness and their health. Amar says, I wish I knew that before I got married and had cancer 3 years later. I thought he was my forever person. Nope. Now I'm left with nothing and starting from the bottom again. It's really sad that women are finding these things out on the fly, but this will help the next generation of women know and understand so that they can prep themselves emotionally, because I don't want women to just lose themselves because of a relationship status. You are more than a wife and a mom, and you need to know and understand that just in case a relationship ends. Bryn at the bottom says, oncology nurse here can confirm that the men will leave or neglect their wives. Hanan says, maybe I don't need marriage. Megan says, you definitely do not. Grim says, don't. Stay single. It's much better. I've never married and am so much happier and better off than my married friends. Trey says, I work in health insurance, and there are so many women who get sick and end up getting removed from their husband's insurance plans, oftentimes unbeknownst to them. I'm telling y'all this. I'm telling y'all what these women are saying because they have experienced it. So many times, women saying these things, we used to get labeled as bitter and angry and blah, blah, blah. But all of these women that are having these experiences were not bad guys. They're not bad guys because they got sick. They're not bad guys because their kid got sick or whatever. They're literally just trying to live in this world. And then these bad things happen. So please know and understand that this is life. People get sick. As we get older, things happen. Even young people get sick. People get hurt. So know and understand that this is what some of these women have experienced. I'm going to end it with this. Ducky says, when I had a cancer scare, the team very carefully asked about my family structure. When I said I was already divorced, the nurse gave a relieved sigh and said, good. Now, that would, just like Marge responded with, damn. That requires a damn, because they have seen enough. The nurses have seen enough to know a lot of the time these women will be left alone anyway. So it's better to mentally prepare them. And these types of videos are sad. I know and understand that, but it's necessary to have these conversations. All right, y'all. Join the conversation. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.